we have Megha joining us. She'll be talking more about bridging words from React developer to 3D web innovator. Looking forward to this talk.
Hello everyone, I am Megha and today I will be presenting on bridging worlds from React developer to 3D web innovator. So before we jump into the talk, a little introduction about me. I am Megha Pathak. I am currently working at Flipkart as a UI tool. And on side, I am a hobbyist indie game developer. You can find me on X or GitHub using these credentials. So let's quickly jump into the talk. So, bridging worlds, that sounds quite fancy. To be honest, I wanted to give a eye-catchy title to this talk. I think I went a little overboard. But yeah, that's what we are gonna do for major of the talk today. I'll just break it down the title for you, like how we are merging two worlds and what those two worlds are. And we can just see how this journey is not just exciting for us, but increasingly relevant for web developers like us. Uh, so just a quick introduction of React 3 Fiber. React 3 Fiber is a library of React that allows developers to render 3D graphics. Under the hood is just a React renderer for 3JS, and 3JS again is an open source 3D engine. So, and why it is relevant, you might ask. I think there are like enough launches every now and then for us to understand the increasing importance of spatial design, WebXR, and how there are like new devices and browsers and everything to support that. So every new day, there is more possibility of what more we can achieve, not in only in our XY coordinates, but also in the Z space as well. So considering like everybody is getting to this ship, at least it's worthwhile to explore a bit about it and see how it can be more relevant to us. Not only the hobbyist developers like you and me, there it is currently being used by a lot of enterprises as well. For example, like Versal have used React Fiber in a lot of their demos in the recent times. Shopify and BMW in general is using it for their productization. If you go to their pages and see, Shopify uses it for their e-commerce experience where they want to have some AR and 3D capabilities. IKEA also uses it for their productization and so on. Hubs by Mozilla is a VR and AR space for meetings and social interactions that also utilizes React Fiber. And Play Canvas is simply a game engine that is built upon React Fiber so that you can leverage it to make games. But like this is a game engine that is built that on the web. So as I mentioned to Faizan earlier, my discovery of React Fiber was not from a place that I'm a web developer. I want to explore WebXR. I came across React Fiber accidentally, but like as a game developer. So, but we'll get into the more details of this discovery in a little bit later part of this presentation. Let me just first give you a small, overlook of both the worlds that we are trying to merge today. So the first one would be how my traditional 3D development or 3D game development would looks like. I will be using the terms 3D game development, immersive experience, 3D development a little interchangeably because personally for me, all the experience I had with 3D development in general have been very centric towards animation movies and 3D games in general. So my entry gate have been games only. So I sort of use these terms interchangeably in this slide. So to call anything 3D, there are a certain workflow or a certain path that you take. And this remains same irrespective of what you are trying to make, maybe an animation movie or a game or any immersive experience in 3D space. The steps remain same. So for example, I want to make a bouncy, soccer ball in a 3D space. First, I will conceptualize it using a tool like Photoshop, Figma, or something of that sort. In this step, I will like storyboard it or like create, rough sketches around what my life cycle and everything would look like. Nextly, I would like need to 3D model it in a tool like Blender or Maya. or Rhino.js or some Rhino 3D or something of that sort. In this, we what we do is we just have a collection of polygons in the 3D space, and that represents my object. But as you can see, doesn't look like an object you would see in a game or so on. Then comes the texturing part of it. So I will apply paints or different textures or materials to it so that it looks more lifelike. Nextly, I would need to rig it. In case of football, it is not, it is not that much required. But if I am dealing with something like animals or human bodies or anything in general that has a certain motion to it, I can't have a certain motion without defining where the joints and bones of a particular object are. So that's where rigging and skinning comes into picture. Again, to do this, I can do this in tools like Blender or like similar tools in general. And then I can import it in any tooling platform where I want to add animations to it. We can use something like Mixamo, which is a platform by Adobe that has an open source collection of multiple animations. And then we get all of this together into a game engine of like Unreal, Unity, Godot, or something like that, where we can where we can check the compatibility, the texturing that I made, and the rigging and everything. All of that bring together. Is it working in my 3D environment or not? In the game engine, as I mentioned, it is about bringing everything together. Right now, your football was standing alone in Blender itself, but now I want to place it on a ground. So that bringing together of things, I'll do it in a game engine. But all of this is a static scene right now. There is like nothing interactive about it. That's where like code comes into picture. So majority of the game engines today support very low level languages like C# and C++. Most of them give support of visual coding languages as well, but this gets very overwhelming to do something really complex using a visual coding language. So it's like I have preferred using like the normal way of writing code in general. Then moving forward, now that you are introducing interactivity in general, we need to bring in physics simulation as well. We need to introduce things like gravity, forces, and so on. Because like, how do I know that a ball should be landing on a ground plane and not flying? This is all defined by physics itself. Then all of this is running on mute right now. So I would need to use a tool like Audacity to add certain sounds to it so that I can add the sound of a ball spinning, or like it is hitting the ground, or it is like, scrolling through a surface and so on. And to finally make it usable on other devices, I would need to package and publish it. So that is also done by like porting it into different devices. I can run it on console or PC and so on. So all of these steps are required to make, even if I'm like building a AAA game, or even if I'm building something very small. There are certain cons to it, of course, like all the tools I have mentioned. Like there could be certain tools that doesn't work for a certain use case. So you might need to fumble around other tools as well. And spending two months on each tool is a very steep learning curve. And it is very resource extensive. I can't really run these standalone, standalone applications on a simpler device. It requires a certain level of GPU and CPU to run these. In short, if I try to comprise all of it, there are like way too many moving parts in this traditional route of game development, and there is a lot of time I am spending on the setup rather than the code development. So it gets very time consuming and causes a lot of fatigue in general. So, and also there are like a lot of leaky abstractions. For example, I just made a bouncy ball, but I want to use it again in my another game or another animation movie again. I can't simply create a component out of it and import it the next time I'm using it. Or like I can't simply create a module out of it and just call it in my game. Again, there is support for plugins, but plugins again are very, plugins again are a very long route to take to implement something. So it's not as easy that, this is something repeatedly I'm using, I'll just create a plugin of it. So But that said, my experience was with traditional game development was good. Experienced learned all of this while I was part of a code-based course over 6 months or so. There, I got to build a short film, create conceptual projects like space design, what a space office in space would look like, learn things like gray boxing, also build a small horror game. So overall, after going through that whole journey, I can tell there are cons, but I won't deny that it was a fun experience as well. For me, anything at the intersection of art and technology is thrilling. It's a kind of topic you can like wake me up at like 3 in the night and I'll be excited to talk about. So even if the journey required me to learn 15 different tools, I didn't mind it in journal. But so there are like, of course, like pros to it as well. Like if I'm doing traditional game development, there is like good comprehensive documentation. It enables you to do cross-platform development. There's a strong community as well. And I come from a coding background, but for people who don't, there is a good support for visual coding. For example, blueprint systems are there so that you can like visually code your entire thing. With all of this, I became majorly fascinated about things like world building, game mechanics, what the animation techniques look like, and so on. But while I was doing all of this and juggling with all these tooling, there was one tool that stood out to me the most. That was this tool, that is Ready Player Me. Ready Player Me is a tool that helps you with the character design. If I want to design my NPCs or my main character, I can simply go to this tool and create different type of configurations for that character. But why this tool stood out to me, this was the only tool that I used in my whole workflow that was not a standalone app, and this was like running on web itself. So this was the only webified tool that I got to use. So I got very intrigued that how is this possible that it is able to give me so high quality exports, and still it is like not as heavy as like I'm downloading a 11 GB standalone app to run this. So digging deep, I realized that it uses React 3 Fiber, and it sort of very much fascinated me because this is the first time I saw something so webified, and it was like I was like that okay, this is like possible on the web itself. So then like life caught up. I got to my full-time job, sort of like stopped doing game dev in between a bit. But then I again came across this Versalship demo that was launched in I think sometime back. So again, if you see that if they also have a blog post about it, and this is a video of Theo talking about it, that everybody was astonished that how a identity card like this or a 3D experience like this can be built using built-in web. So the title of this talk was this video was also something similar, that he talks about that how is this possible to build something like this on the web. So when I digged more into React 3 Fiber, one thing that I was very astonished about, that how I believe that game development required very different skills, that I'm coding in C Sharp, learning Blender and so on, and how like my normal day job as a React developer looked very different. How my very entirely different skills were all together when I was exploring React 3 Fiber. It simply uses the principles of game development along with web APIs. So things like cameras, renderers, and like, what an environment looks like and everything. This all I learned in game development, but there was a web API for all of this. So this is how it is like, it tackles games on the web. So that's why I like got interested in it and started exploring. So if you're like me, who likes to who is building web apps in their day job or just for fun, but dream of making more and want to push this further, this library is for you. It's sort of like bridges our two worlds, that is of like a 3D React developer and a 3D web innovator, 2D web developer and 3D web innovator. But the thing is, like, even if you do a very quick Google search right now, it will show you a plenty of demos. But demos are not games. So there is a lot of, small demos you can find around where like somebody is like spinning a table in a 3D space, or like there would be a very good cool room, but that doesn't have the kind of interactivity that is there with the games. So how do we like enable people to create truly immersive worlds and games in the web? Uh, so yeah, so for this, let's revisit. Uh, for this, like I think we majorly require a very good React oriented 3D game engine. But like before, visiting that, let's just revisit what React actually stands for. I think like it is too much on the nose to discuss what React actually is in a React conference, but let's just like quickly do it. React at its core is an abstraction over DOM, or more precisely, if I say, it's an abstraction over document like renders. But the main qualities that makes React special is like it's just functional, so it makes my code more predictable and easier to test. It's composable, so I can like build very complex UIs using very smaller usable chunks. And it is declarative, so I can just tell what I want and not get into how to do it, which makes my whole coding experience very intuitive. But the main thing that I find the most important is it progressively enhances with new libraries. So tomorrow, if there is a new runtime, or if there is a new paradigm of like doing things, or if there are new patterns, I can simply grow my game or grow my code base with the JavaScript community. If anything new comes up, there isn't a very big blocker to include that in your project, as long as your project is based out of JavaScript. So, which is again in very much contrast with what how traditional game engines work, because they are like very monolithic, and it requires you to take the entire setup with you wherever you go. So for example, the setup I showed you earlier, that like you have to go through all these steps to call something 3D, that all you have to do, even if you are making something very complex, or even if you are making something very simple. So for example, tomorrow if a new state management library looks like, and it is supported by React, I can't really take it to Unreal and use it with C# and so on, because it is just not possible. There is a very monolithic system that is present over there. So the best React game engine, in my opinion, would have pros of both. The pros of traditional game development I showed earlier, as well as the pros of React in general. So it will render like a document, be functional, be declarative, supports composition, but at the same time, it will support things like physics, camera support, lighting, etc. That's where like if you like see all of this, and then if you go through the React 3 Fiber documentation, you will see how this all sort of like fits together. Somebody who haven't seen React anytime before, or somebody who hasn't seen Unreal Engine before, both of them can relate way too much with each other if this like bridging thing is in between. So I would like to show a quick demo how like this entire things come into picture. Uh, and like how the whole life cycle that I discussed with traditional game development earlier, how easy it becomes to do in React 3 Fiber in general. So the bouncing ball I showed earlier, I think it would have taken me a day or a half to do all of it and export it. But a little more complex than that, and a little small game, if I try to build in a React 3 Fiber, how complex it is and how it sort of translates, that I would like to discuss now. So we start with a basic setup. So here's my code. This is a basic white project. There's like nothing much here. This is my entry point, of course. In my app JSX, if there is nothing but just a menu screen, which is again a 2D screen only, which has certain small divs, and they are like they are rendering certain data based on what the state is like, but there is like nothing 3D at the moment here. This is just a 2D screen in general. So if I run it, it shows me something like this. If I do start game, I don't know if you can hear the sound of it. It's just like burst chirping sound in the background. But it is just a blank screen at the moment. The initial screen I showed, this is just a 2D screen, how we make anything simply. Then if we have a basic setup, what we'll do is we need three things. First is canvas, camera, and third is renderer. So to call anything 3D, you need these three fundamental things. Canvas is the most fundamental, component in React 3 Fiber because it serves as a container for your 3D scene. And canvas is my entry point in any of my 3D scene. So for example, like if any website you make, the most majority of the website we or web apps we make in general, all of them are render oriented, but games are data oriented. So we need something to, sort of re-render or loop over our render so that I can like show different sort of, animations in my screen in general. So that's where render loop comes into picture. So render canvas sets up an animation loop, calling my components render method again and again, and it accept different props like renderer, camera, and other global setting. Camera is nothing. Camera is just to see whatever is happening on my screen. I'll see it from first person or I'll see it from the third person and so on. And scene and camera are re-rendered with every frame. So that's where like this thing comes into picture. As a developer, I don't need to manually re-trigger it. So if I include just these three things, like I added a camera, suspense, we know suspense I just added to lazy load things. Physics is just wrapping my entire experience. So if I add this, now what you see, now just to know that, all of this got added, I just added a background color. So now if I start the game, now this scene is a 3D scene. Like what I entered into, now I can call this project a 3D project because it has canvas and camera associated with it. So that is the basic most setup that scene setup that we need to do if we are like beginning with anything 3D. Secondly, now we can think about doing environmental design. So for environmental design, to make environment of anything, even if you like see in my background, if I want to make an environment of my room, I'll add a table, chair, certain walls, would add ceiling, floor. So environmental design works into this manner only. React 3 Fiber gives us React 3 Dry. What it does is it just gives us a wide range of pre-built, ready-to-use 3D components that we can do, use to do certain complex operations. So if I get to my code right now, so if we begin with the environmental design, what we will do is we get to our experience file and we just begin with creating a simple grasslands in starting. So I added this and we just refresh it and see. There is nothing here. So my grassland got added, but I can't see it. Why I can't see it? Because there are like no lights in the system currently. So to add the lights, I'll simply add a direction light and we'll just set a stage. So stage again is given to me by React 3 Dry only. Stage, what stage does is you can just simply think of it. He just sets a vibe to your entire setup. So if here I have just added a sunset sort of file. So just to give a sunset sort of vibe to my entire thing. Directional light is nothing but like sun in your 3D space. And I can like adjust the intensity and everything to it. Now, again, this grassland came out, but it is appearing in a 2D space. So how do I know it's 3D? Unless, because again, like if somebody is seeing me on the top and nothing is moving and they can't really move around, they will see it as a, picture only. If you can move around, then you know it's 3D. So for that, we'll add the orbital controls. This is also provided by React 3 Dry only. As I mentioned that these are like, pre-built 3D components. I can like write my own orbital control as well, but this is just a collection of different reusable 3D components that are generally used in every 3D space. So now that I added the orbital controls, now I can 3D navigate it. Now I can call it that, it's a 3D grassland where I can like move around and see things. Now, just to add some more aesthetic things, I think I'm just gonna try to make a forest kind of scene. So I'll add certain rocks, I'll add a pond, and I'll just add a small deer grazing in that grassland. So now that if you see it, So I can like zoom as well, because it is like giving me capability to roam around in entire 3D space. For each of these models, we like import, we can use GLTF models. And again, this is a hook that is provided to me by React 3 Dry only, because I can import any GLB file, and it is like converting this into a GSX component. And coming from a traditional, game development background, I can tell you how big of a headache it is to convert your models in different formats supported by different Blender supports something else, and then you have to export it in something else, then you are trying to use it with some other software, because all of that is so fragmented. And sometimes something is working so fine and you want to just add bones to it, but the software you import into doesn't recognize it that way. So it is a very big headache. But considering this is a React setup and it simply converted my GLB, it's also a 3D file format, into my GSX component, it became so easy that I can do manipulations on it how I would have done to a normal 3D component. So all of this got added. Now, again, all of this is for aesthetic purpose only. Then if I want to add a play area where like my main game would reside into, I just added this. So I added a small bear along with some trees onto this, again a small piece of grass, which has which is represented here. So again, the material and color that I gave it to it, again, this is also a JSX component uh, that you can use, and this is also provided by React 3 Elements to you. So this is the scene that I will be working with. That there is a small bear, probably this will act like a main player for me. Deer is out there just for aesthetic purposes, and they're like trees and everything, and there's like a small pond in the background. So now that I've included everything in my environmental design, we can move forward and define the life cycle of the game. So what exactly my game would do? So this is the stage where, like, again, this is why I came into game development in general, that it allows me customization on every step, that I can define here what my tree would look like. I want to place a tree like this, or like whatever my aesthetics are like. And similarly, whatever I want my game to be. So here, if I define the life cycle of my game, I want it this way, that my bear can move in all four directions, and either it will like collide with a tree, or it will not collide with a tree. If it doesn't collide with a tree, nothing happens. If it collides with a tree, we will just check if that tree has honey. If the tree has honey, then it's like a +1 score, and we move to the next stage. If it doesn't have honey, I have an option as a player to collide with another tree, and again we check if the tree has honey. This is the simplest, logic I could come up with, that there's just a bear roaming around for honey. And all of this we can define in our game store. So in my game store, I am using Justand with the subscribe. So what subscribe function simply allows me to subscribe to changes in my store. So any change comes up, I can like access it in different parts of my entire game. So I have these particular functions. So one is that I define the states of my game. Either I will be in menu state, or I will be in game state, or the game would be over. There is like, these are the majority of the states I can be in. Then I have a play audio function that simply helps me in playing different sort of feedback audios, so that if I'm colliding with the screen, how would I know? If I'm colliding with a tree, how would I know if it is a wrong tree or right tree, unless there is, sound associated with. This is my main function, that is like my game store, where I created a store with certain functions. In my start game, I'm generating levels. Generating levels is not doing much, beside like I have just defined how many trees minimum trees should be there. And for each level, it is just creating a set of trees which are represented here. For example, like you can see 4 trees, and in the next level there might be 3 trees. So it is just generating a random set of trees. And from those trees, we are randomly assigning which tree would have the honey, because we don't know like which one will have the honey. And honey hunting is the main purpose of the game. Then I have my next stage, which whenever I move to my next stage, it will just do the current stage plus one, and it is just for the progression basis. My main function is this. This is my main game logic, that when I'm touching a tree, I have to check if the tree has honey, I move to the next game stage. Otherwise, we just said wrong answer plus one, that I have given one more wrong answer. I just play the audio for the wrong tree. So all of this would is the main logic of what my game would do. The remaining things that we did in the environmental design were how my game would look. Again, if you compare it with the traditional game development journey, the whole workflow is same. It's just it is very simplified because everything I'm doing in React or like JS only. So moving on, right now, like you can see all of this, like, but neither my bear sort of moves or nothing happens because there is no interactivity in the game as of now. So that's where interactivity comes into picture. So React 3 Fiber again gives me a 3D engine called Rapier. So Rapier is a physics engine that is written in Rust and designed for like high performance real time physics in games and physics simulation. And React 3 Rapier is just a wrapper over it to use it in React 3 Fiber. So if I want to have some certain interactivity, interactivity is nothing like there is a static body and I add physics to it. For example, gravity will work on it now, forces will work on it now, or collisions will work on in this now. So all of that combined adds interactivity to that object. So interactivity is nothing but physics plus static body. And then we have things like rigid body and colliders. This you might have seen in the experience one as well. So a rigid body is nothing that I can apply things like, a rigid body can have things like mass, velocity, friction. Again, these things are the things that make any body dynamic. If I have mass, so there would be certain properties to it that, that thing would weigh and it has a velocity to it. So that thing would move and if it has friction and so on. And then there are things like colliders, so that I know that, something came in contact with something. So that's where like collision comes into picture. That is again a very important thing. Otherwise, like a character can move around in a game, but we will never know something happened unless we sort of map that a collision happened between this or a non-living thing or a living thing or something of that sort. And to get all of this working, we will use frame and use keyboard controls as hooks. So let me just get to the interactivity part. So let me just discard it a bit. Yeah, cool. So in my interactivity, I need to add interactivity to two things. I need to add interactivity to my bear in journal. So to add interactivity to my bear, first thing is I need to define that when I'm pressing my left key or when I'm pressing my right key, what is exactly is happening. So the controls we define in my app JSX, that will come into picture now. And the use keyboard control is just, taking my selector and binding my controls with a certain key. So this you can define according to yourself. Whatever key you press, you can like do jump with it or back or something of that sort. And then comes my use frame hook. This is most probably this is one of the most important hooks in this entire setup, because what it does, remember a few slides back I mentioned that there is a render loop that continuously runs and shows different animations on different screens. So what use frame does is, for example, I have a character and it is just like doing it hand like this continuously in the entire game. But now I'm pressing a button. Now I want it to just stop doing that, static animation and go somewhere or like run or jump or something of that sort. So what use frame does is it interrupts in that render loop and does whatever we define our character to do, or like, for example, in here, what I'm doing, I'm calculating the impulse and applying it to my character. So with apply impulse, I am applying the force to my character that now I'm pressing this key and now you move with this certain speed. And so this is all is happening using the use frame. Again I have to like interrupt the render loop because like I also want my camera to follow the character in the world position. So camera will look at the target loop, that is the character's world position in X and Z coordinates. So all of this I want. So use frame would be utilized for it. And another thing that I would need to do is like, this is my gameplay area. But if I move two away from this and like go into the void itself, again, if you remember, we named the entire grassland as void, and this is, I don't want my character to go beyond this. So what I will do is like every time it is going beyond the position, I am just resetting its position to 000 again, so that it doesn't go beyond the play area. So all of this is happening, and then this static element that we had, we added all of these hooks and intersections over it, so that wherever, so that we can add interactivity to this particular character. But again, when it is colliding with trees, nothing is happening because like it is colliding with trees, but the tree itself needs to have some interactivity to have that callback that now we have to do something. So now if you remember, we created this callback in our game store that was tree touched. This is my main logic, that when a tree is touched, we move to the next stage or not. So we need a place to add this as well. So that's where like the final step of our game comes into picture, that if I go to the tree spots, this is again nothing but like I am just randomly assigning certain angles on which I want to place my trees. And my trees also have a cylinder collider. If you see, there is a cylinder collider surrounding it. So whenever my bear interacts with my tree, I want to call this function that has tree touched and with the instance of the tree. So now if I press it, and if we like refresh it now, it's just interactive. I don't know if you can hear the sound or not, but like this was the wrong tree and the Q is the sound. This was also the wrong tree and this was the right tree. So it moved to the next stage. So again, if you see, it will like just continue like this for certain stages. This was the right tree, and so on. It will like go on till the defined number of levels are reached. So that was majority of it. So congrats, you have just built yourself a little 3D game. This whole experimentation or taking such small example was mainly purpose towards showing you that how near it is compared to how our normal React development life cycle and everything looks like, compared to what how monolithic or how tedious it is to create the games the traditional way. Moving forward, like as from the future scope, I would just like to encourage you as well to explore this, because of the increasing focus on WebXR in general. Personally, I am also trying to build a game that I was initially trying to build in Unreal, but now that I've gotten so fascinated towards React 3.5 in general, so I'm trying to build that capstone game that I've always wanted to build in this project itself. Thank you very much. That was my time today. Thank you for the organizers for putting this through. I really enjoyed giving this talk. I hope you all got to learn something. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.